My official 4-year business anniversary just passed at the time of this episode airing, and 4 years, it feels both longer than that and also shorter than that at times. And hilariously, I often forget how long I've been in business. Like it took me a second and some math to figure out it was 4 years. But when I knew the anniversary was coming up, I was like, I want to record an episode with some advice for you guys about what I've learned and big takeaways from my business, from building it past the six-figure a year mark in the past, 3 to 4 years. And obviously there are way more than 3 things I've learned. I thought of a lot of different things I could share, but I picked 3 things that feel especially big and more about the mindset than like a specific one strategy thing. So things that feel big looking back over in the past 4 years. And these things I'm sharing here are not things I've talked about on the podcast before. I wanted to share something completely new with you guys. So cheers to 4 years. Let's dive in. Hey guys, it's Elizabeth McCravey, and you're listening to the Breakthrough Brand Podcast. Each week, I'll bring you workshop-style trainings that teach you how to stand out online, design success from the inside out, and create a breakthrough business. It's time to turn viewers into raving fans and design the business and life of your dreams. I'm so excited you're here. So starting your business can be really subtle, I think, at least it was for me. And my business anniversary, in the sense of what I'm talking about right now, of like when I made it official, was 4 years ago on March 29th. But starting my business felt much slower and more subtle than that. And in reality, it's closer to like 4.5 years since I started the process of starting my business. And if you've listened to episode 1 of this podcast, then you know I worked for a corporate advertising agency right out of college. And then I quit that job after about 3 months. I felt totally defeated and I was just looking for a more fulfilling job. While in the job search, I ended up freelancing a ton, and I had already been freelancing through college. And at that first job in advertising, I had clients that I was working on the side. And so during that time, I nannied, I taught yoga, I dog sat, I did a lot of freelance graphic design, all the random things. And then at some point in all of that, while I was looking for a job, I decided to quit the job search and make the freelancing stuff into an actual business. And again, all of that was so subtle. It was really a process, not a moment. But I know if you're like me, then you think of like the date of when you started your business, like the anniversary of it, probably as the time that you got a website or got social media or something like that and did a post about it. So for me, the time I'm saying was like the official start date was when I did a post on Instagram and Facebook, just on a personal Instagram and Facebook account to my friends and family, announcing that I was now in business. And that was 4 years ago. And fun thing, if you want a major throwback, head over to the show notes for this episode. It'll be at elizabethmccravey.com/60, just 60. You can see a screenshot of that Instagram post that was the post of me announcing my business, and things have come a long way. And I look at that post with like so much love and like excitement, thinking back to how I felt at that time. And fun fact too, my business had a completely different name and did completely different things back then. So you'll even see that in the post. So definitely go look at that. But without further ado, here are my 3 pieces of advice for you based on things I've learned over the last 4 years building a 6-figure a year website design business. So my first big tip, and this one's going to sound so basic, so please do not turn me off and let me explain it in detail before you're like, that's too basic. So the first one, go after what you want with boldness. And that what I mean by that is like to ask for what you want and or just go get it instead of waiting for things to happen to you. And the reason this is a lesson is because I think it can be hard to be bold enough to just go after what you want in your business, because we can be timid. We can think, who am I to do this? And we doubt ourselves a ton. And that's especially true in that like first year of your business. You often feel like you have no credibility to even be doing what you're doing. I know I felt that way at times, but I believe one of the keys to business success is asking for what you want or just going after it directly if it's not something you need to ask for. And I have an example for what I mean. So many of you know I had the privilege of speaking at Business Boutique in 2018. So Business Boutique, it's a conference put on by Christy Wright through Ramsey Solutions. It's a women small business owner conference, and they have multiple events a year, but the big event of the year happens in Nashville, and it's huge. The year I spoke at it, there were over 3,200 people there, all women mostly, except for like some of the speakers were men, and I think there were probably like 5 men in the audience who were spouses, but it was mostly women. And after that event, so many people were just like, how did you do that? Like, how'd you get asked to do that? And it really helped me a lot. It helped me grow my following on social media. I mean, you can imagine when you're on a stage and there are 3,200 people staring at you that you're going to get some gains there. It also helped me build an audience when I launched this podcast and so many other things. And some of you listening were probably actually there that day that I spoke. And after, people would tell me things like, you're so lucky that you got asked to speak. And they were thinking of that somewhat. I mean, I don't know everyone's internal thoughts, but like it was just something that happened to me, like not something I worked for. And so I would get questions like, does Christy follow you on Instagram? And did she just see that like your business is blowing up? Like, how did they ask you? How did you make that happen? You're so lucky they picked you. And I want you to know something, a fun thing. I really don't think I've shared this on the podcast, but I was not asked to speak at Business Boutique. No one came to me and was like, Elizabeth, you're so amazing. We need you to speak. I actually pitched myself to speak, and I went after what I wanted with boldness and without caring about being rejected. So the year prior, I attended Business Boutique for the first time, and I still remember sitting in the audience, and I was watching the women on the success story panel. That's the panel I ended up being on, and they were being interviewed by Christy, and I visualized myself up there like the whole time. I was obviously intently listening to them and learning from them, but I thought about what I would tell people, how I would answer those questions, and what it would take for me to be the kind of person that could be interviewed at this event on the success story panel. And I still remember, I'm pretty sure that was like the end, like the last thing of the day on whatever day that was of the conference. But I remember regardless, when I drove home that day, which was a long drive for me from the part of Nashville it was to my house at the time. And I thought about it, like I visualized like myself sitting in that seat and like, what would it take for me to like be the person that could do that? And so I was really, really inspired by it. I visualized it, I wanted it, and then I went after it. So one day, you guys, the next year, I was just thinking about Business Boutique. I don't really know why. And I guess I was thinking about like, maybe I got emails about the event coming up, something like that. And I thought, you know what? I should try to be on that panel. So I emailed a person I knew who worked for Business Boutique. And Christy and I we have a lot of mutual friends, so that I actually met her personally at Business Boutique that year before. It is a long story for another day, but we met because we had mutual friends who were like, you guys need to meet. And so the person who arranged for us to meet, I emailed that person. So anyway, I emailed them, but anyone could get an email contact for an organization like this. But I emailed them and I told them, hey, I'm not sure if you're the right person to email about this, but I would love to be on the success story panel. And here's the value I would bring. Here are the accomplishments my business has had. And here's kind of what I would say. And, I wrote a good email. I archived it and did not think about it anymore. I didn't like obsess over it and worry about it. I was like, I'm just going to put myself out there for this because it's something I want. And then months later, I'd actually kind of even forgotten that I had pitched them, but they emailed me back and someone who worked there asked me like, hey, we want you to be on the panel. And Amy Gabriel, who was also on the panel with me, we became fast friends during that time. She's absolutely amazing. But she had a similar story. She was not just asked, she had pitched herself for something in that realm, different from my story, but she had also asked for it, was not just like randomly selected. So my point in telling you that story is that so many people look at situations like that and they think that person's lucky. I just need to sit around and like hope that happens to me. And I do think I'm very blessed, but I I wasn't lucky to be asked. It wasn't by chance I was up there. It was extremely deliberate and something that I went after. And that time it worked. Other times I've gone after things that I did not get. Both will happen. And there are other times where I've had a win in my business that came through not asking for something, but instead like time of deliberately building something. And I didn't even know there was like some kind of reward in it. An example of that would be winning the Showatier of the Year award last year in 2019. I did not even know that was an award going into that event, but it was selected because of like the whole past year of work I'd been doing with Showit and then being recognized for that. So interrupting this episode with a suggestion for the small business owners listening. Ever wonder what you should do for healthcare when you and your spouse are both self-employed so there's no work-provided health insurance to participate in? Well, when my husband Adam joined me in the entrepreneurial job space over 4 years ago, we joined Christian Healthcare Ministries instead of getting traditional health insurance. And it was the best decision for us, especially in these years of growing and raising a family while also running multiple businesses. CHM is a health cost-sharing ministry and is a faith-based alternative to health insurance. We did tons of research before choosing CHM, and if you know me and Adam, you know we are all about doing the math when making big or small financial decisions. And even though it's not insurance, CHM shares 100% of eligible medical bills, which is more than the typical 70 or 80% of medical bills paid for by insurance companies. All sharing is determined by the CHM guidelines, which you can check out before and after joining. And for the mamas and mamas to be listening, you truly cannot find a better healthcare option for maternity care. I had a vaginal delivery and a C-section and birth center care and hospital care between my 2 pregnancies and births, and it was all 100% shared for. And outside of birth, we've had our share of emergency room visits and procedures as a family, and those costs were all shared by members at Christian Healthcare Ministries, leaving us only paying our monthly contribution. CHM is less expensive month to month than insurance, and because there's no network, you can choose your care with whichever providers best fit your family. I seriously just cannot recommend Christian Healthcare Ministries enough. You've got to check them out. Go to elizabethmccravy.com/CHM for more information. Also putting that link in the show notes, elizabethmccravy.com/CHM. Now back to the episode. My big advice to you with this is to go for the thing you want. Be okay with failure. Be okay with rejection. You have to be willing to work for things that other people are not willing to work for as an entrepreneur. That's the key to success. And sitting around waiting on good things to happen is not what successful people do to build their business. You have to go for it and go get it and be okay with rejection. Be okay with someone saying no, and put your best foot forward in it. And again, like, I know all situations are completely different, but you might be thinking of a situation of something you want, and my advice just now is not possible. I get that. Apply this with a grain of salt to whatever it is you're thinking about. But it's funny because this advice I'm giving you right now at the Business Boutique Conference, one of my final answers, I actually talked about this exact same concept about going after big dreams and goals and visualizing what you want in life and then planning for it. So in honor of celebrating 4 years in business, I'm actually going to play you a clip from that event right now. It's about 3 minutes of audio that was recorded on iPhone, so it's less high quality than the way you're hearing me right now, but it's me answering a question that Christy asked of what advice would I like to give to all the women in the audience. So I'm going to play that right now and hope you enjoy it.
As far as advice, I would say to know that your dream is waiting for you on the other side of your comfort zone, and you just have to go get it. So I'll say again, your dream is waiting for you on the other side of your comfort zone. And what I mean by that is that if you're anything like me, then you literally can visualize that thing you really want in your business and in your life. Like, you can see yourself hitting that revenue goal. You can see yourself making your first sale, the first client, all of those things. Like, you can see it, and it exists there in your mind, and you've just got to go get it. And so often the thing that keeps us from really getting the thing we want so bad in our business is not the nitty-gritty stuff that we think is the problem. It's often us and our anxiety and our need for being in our comfort zone that holds us back. And like you said earlier, our fear is not a sign we're doing something bad. It's a sign we're doing something bold and brave. And it's a sign you care about what you're doing, which is so important. if you don't ever feel like nerves or fear in your business, then you are not doing it big enough. So change it and do something bigger and bolder and say yes to the scary things, and go for your dream on the other side of your comfort zone.
I love it. It's so amazing to see how you guys have done that. One of the things I'm so proud of both of y'all is, and we talked about this with you guys, but we want to give you everything you need this weekend. We want to give you inspiration, encouragement, tools, workbooks, templates, downloads, resources, all the things, but you have to go home and do it. And I'm so proud of them because both of them did. The reason they have the results they've had is they didn't just sit in the seats and listen to it and feel good and leave and just put that workbook on a back shelf and forget about it. They went home and immediately put something into practice, and then the next thing into practice, they changed their mindset, they changed their behaviors, they changed their business, and they got results because of it. So my big lesson and takeaway that I hope you get is the reason they've been able to do this is because they put it into action. That's certainly our goal for you. We don't want you to just be inspired. We want you to go home and do something about it. Can y'all give them another hand? Aren't they awesome? Thank you.
All right, hope you enjoyed that little clip. Now on to my second piece of advice for you. Be unrealistic. So common advice, thoughts we've grown up with and we've heard our whole lives is to be realistic. And I'm telling you the opposite, be unrealistic. So being realistic is safe and it's boring. And for me, when I look around at what's presented as the norm in our world, I personally do not want that. And I'd like to guess you don't either, but that's what we often mean when we're telling people like, be more realistic. We're basically saying like, shoot for what's normal, what's been proven possible by your past or someone else's past. And I would say like, that's not what I want. And I naturally, like my whole life to some extent have preferred being unrealistic with my thinking. I of course had plenty of moments of like, oh my gosh, will this really work? But a little story or two tiny stories from my life. One amazing thing my parents taught me was to always believe in myself and believe in what's unrealistic, that I could work and put in the energy to have what wasn't normal. And as a kid, my dad, he also is a business owner, but he would always tell me pretty consistently that he believed I would own a successful business someday, that I had that in me. And he told me this when I was like at an age not even thinking about business, like as a middle schooler, elementary aged even, that like he thought I was like an entrepreneur at heart. But then he also told me that in college consistently and post-grad when I was in that time of like, what am I going to do next? And that was in a time that I was also being told by other voices that I need to do something more realistic. And when I've told people that, some of those conversations I've had with my dad, they've said like, that sounds like, oh, that'd be a lot of pressure to have a parent telling you like, oh, you're going to like go own a successful business. But to me, it never felt like pressure. It felt like he was seeing something that I kind of didn't even realize I wanted yet, but kind of did later on. And kind of speaking that into me of like, hey, you can really do that thing that you're so interested in doing, and that you can do what might seem unrealistic. Another fast story, I remember in high school still, I cannot remember if I've shared this on the podcast or not, but senior year, you meet with a guidance counselor to talk about career ideas. And I remember meeting, and I was so timid about this as a senior in high school. And I don't even remember what I told the guidance counselor I wanted to do, but it was something not realistic. I can't remember if it was owning a business or just some kind of field that wasn't as traditional. And I told her my idea and I was nervous saying it. Like I still remember in high school when I had ideas about business, I felt like, who am I to do that? And I shouldn't talk about it. And I was told by her that I should choose a more realistic and like standard career path. And that advice, among with other things besides what she just said, and she definitely meant well in that, but that advice led me to go to college as a nursing major. And that felt realistic. If you looked, I mean, I'm sure it's still true right now, but if you looked at colleges at the time, like especially the school I ended up going to, that was like the primary major people were there for, that in education. And I quickly realized like, hey, I actually don't want to be a nurse. I really like science, but I'd rather like computer science. And I changed to a more unrealistic career path by studying digital media, graphic design, and computer science. And I actually was in like one of the smallest majors at the school, like like the literal path less chosen. I was the only girl in my graduating class with my major because it was so small, and it was mostly boys who really liked computers. And then the girls were doing graphic design, and that was a more full major, but still not as big as like the traditional stuff that everyone was doing, like nursing. And again, not to say there's anything bad about being a nurse. I have so much respect for nurses, have a lot of friends that do that, but that wasn't the right thing for me. And what I wanted was the like less standard, more unrealistic career path. And when you think about your goals and dreams right now, I want you to know, like, no matter what you're doing in your career, if you are a nurse, if you're something else, your goals and dreams should be unrealistic and they should be scary. And great businesses were built on scary dreams, not realistic, normal plans. Hear that again. Great businesses were built on scary dreams, not realistic, normal plans. But I think we forget that sometimes, and we tell ourselves, like, I have this idea of this scary income goal, but I need to be more realistic. Or I really want to launch this thing that I think people need, but I need to be more realistic. So I want to encourage you to go dream bigger and dream more intensely and more out there. And why this matters too is because how you see your business determines what's possible in your business. Like how you see it. If you see it in this little tiny box that's all it can be, that's what's possible. So if you're setting your limiting beliefs based on what's normal, what's realistic, then that's what you're going to get. You're going to get normal. But if you go for believing that the possibilities are limitless, you can get that potential level in yourself. So I really just want to encourage you with that one. Be unrealistic. And remember too that what you spend your time imagining is what you're going to magnify in your life. So think unrealistically, dream really big. One of my personal favorite random things to do, I'm sure many of you do this as well, I call it my thinking time, but this is typically when I go on a walk or if I'm at the gym. It might be walking around the track at the gym or on the treadmill, and I put in my headphones so it would look as if I'm listening to something. It kind of helps me like mentally move inward, but I don't play anything, like not even music, and I just think. And I actually did that this morning. I'm recording this during a time where we are all quarantined in our homes because of coronavirus, but I did get to go on a walk this morning, and I did that alone and went on a walk around my neighborhood with my headphones in and a really heavy jacket because it was cold this morning. And I just thought, and I let myself dream big. I actually thought about what I would say in this podcast episode and kind of mentally outlined what I'm sharing with you now. But yeah, I let myself have thinking time and let myself dream big. So that would be another encouraging thing here on this note. Give yourself space and time in your life to like just sit around or walk around and dream big about your business and about what you want. So to recap those first two, the first tip I gave was go after what you want with boldness. And the second one was be unrealistic. Now, the third and final thing, go with your gut and don't be afraid to make huge transitions in your business. So the third big lesson I want to share with you is about trusting your gut and intuition when it comes to transitions in your business. And this thing can apply to so many areas, but I'm talking about changing the type of business you have, changing your business name, changing your website, closing a business, opening a business, changing your services, changing who your target audience is. All of those kinds of changes we can obsess over and freak out about and resist doing. But my advice to you is make the transition you want to make and know that you know what is ultimately best for your business. Like even more so than a coach you can hire, more than someone like me that you can listen to in a podcast, you know what's best for your business. And so when you see something that you're like, that's a transition I need to make, that's a goal I need to go after, that's something like I need to do, like opening a new business, closing what you're currently doing, changing a service, all of that kind of stuff, I would say go with your intuition on it and do what you feel is best. So examples, in the past 4 years, I've made so many transitions. I've talked about some on the podcast, and I want to talk about two of them briefly here. So the first one when I started freelancing, so even before 4 years ago when I started my business, more like 4.5 years ago, I was a social media manager who was trained in graphic design. And I also was trained in social media marketing through an internship I did in college, which some of you have heard me talk about. It was an internship turned job. So I had experience in both. But the point is, I did not start out as a website designer. I started out with social media marketing, and then I moved on to brand design, and then I moved on to other types of graphic design, like billboards. I did some billboards, things like that. And then I moved on to websites. And my services evolved so much the whole time I was doing that. At times it could even feel like I was on my website editing what my offer was, like all the time. And in the midst of all that happening, I changed my business name a total of 3 times, and I had 4 different websites in those 4 years. Like when I say new websites, I mean like I started over on the design. And now the whole time I had my business, I was able and could do website design. So I wasn't hiring someone for a redesign every year or anything like that, but it was transitions. And the reason I kept transitioning was that I was finding my sweet spot for who I wanted to serve and how I wanted to serve them. And I think doing that takes time. And I think sometimes people think, or like, because that could be common advice, that you need to like pick something niche down really specifically, and then that's all you can do. Like, pick that you're a social media manager and you do it for this audience and that's it. But the truth is that sometimes things can take a while for you to figure out what you're best at and what you want to offer to the world. So my big advice is trust your own instincts with the transitions, and know too, like I said, no one else can see your business the same way you see it. So another transition I want to share, and I actually think I haven't talked about this one, was one I made when I switched to Showit. So I use Showit as a website designer. That's what the templates I sell are made on. That's what custom sites I've made. That's what my site's on. And at the time that I decided to start designing on Showit, I'd actually just redesigned my website, one of those 4 times, not on Showit. And I had just rebranded myself again under a new business name. You guys, it sounds like I'm so mentally all over the place and indecisive. Sometimes I am. But I remember when I discovered Showit, I had been looking into it a while, and I remember telling my husband about Showit and him saying are you sure you should switch to that? You just spent so much time on this new website. You're not even sure if you want to do more website design projects. Because at that time I was already designing websites. And he kind of spoke that voice, which was a good voice to have alternative views. But he spoke that voice of should you really do that? Shouldn't you stay with what you're already doing? What's safe? What I was doing was working fine. I was booking clients. My business felt successful, all of that kind of stuff. And I want you to remember, again, people are never going to see your business as clearly as you could see it. He did not know all the things I knew about what was happening in my business, things I was learning about Showit, things I knew about design, all of that kind of stuff. And at that time, you guys, it sounds crazy, but I could already see my business where it is now because, again, I'm all about visualizing, but I saw what I wanted it to become, and I had a plan for how long it would take. And as soon as I found Showit, I knew that was going to be a piece to my puzzle, and I still have it. I kind of wish I had it brought up right now. But I have a page in one of my old business journals. I always have business journals. I start a new one every year that's it's not like my scratch notebook. I have one of those too where I just write random things in, like to-do lists for my weekly planning, things like that. But this is more of my business dreaming journal. But I had a page in there where I wrote out what my timeline was going to be for all the things I wanted to do with my business, and Showit fit into that really well. And so I knew that in order to start designing on Showit, I need to make my own website on Showit first, and then do a couple client sites really low price, lower than I was charging on the other platform I was using because I was new to it. But it was so worth it. And only I could have really known that for myself, trusted that it was going to be worth it. So know that you know more about your own business than a business coach does, than your spouse, than me as a mentor to you through this podcast. Just I want you to know that you can trust your own intuition, trust your gut about what's best for your business, and make big shifts that move you towards where you're wanting to go. So that's my number 3. Go with your gut. Don't be afraid to make huge transitions. And again, those 2 examples, I've changed my services. I changed the primary website builder I was using. And you guys, I was not able to even see how big of an impact switching to Showit would be in my business. Like this year, I was like, when was that? That feels so long ago. This year in February, you probably have, if you follow me on social media, saw, but I got to go on a trip with Showit to Cabo, Mexico, actually, where it was a trip with the top 15 designers that they have chosen, top 15 designers on their platform. If I had decided I got to stay safe and just do what I'm already doing because it's working fine, I would have never been on that trip because I never would have switched to Showit. So again, you know what's best for your business. Go with your gut. Do scary things. That's my tip number 3. And to close us out, you guys, I have a quote from one of my personal business mentors, James Wedmore, and I love this quote. He said this a bunch of times, but I have it on these little cards we got from one of the programs I'm in with him. And I love this idea and I love to operate from it. So he says, I'm not saying building a business is easy, but making it hard doesn't mean you'll be successful. That quote always makes me laugh a little bit because it's so true. I'm not saying that building a business is easy, but making it hard doesn't mean you'll be successful. And so my final tip to you as we close this out is to choose ease and choose inspired action in your business. And don't work mindlessly, but work intentionally and work in alignment, not just like hustling towards like not even knowing what you're working towards, but instead being intentional and working in alignment. And I think this idea of like making that it's not easy, but making it hard doesn't mean it'll work can apply to so many areas of our business. And maybe that speaks to something for you right now that I'm not even thinking of, because I have a lot of thoughts of like things this can speak to, but it can be totally something different for you. So remember that making just something might not be easy, but making it hard doesn't mean you're going to be successful with it. So I like to operate from a place of ease and like letting things be easy. So my advice to you is let it be easy, be in alignment, and don't force things. So that's it, you guys. I hope you enjoyed this. I know this episode probably felt a little bit less outlined. I came up with a lot of random things as I was talking that were not in my notes. So I hope this resonated with you, and I hope you hear my heart in this with this advice and that it speaks to you and something you're dealing with in your business. This is what I've learned. 3 of the many things I've learned from building my business in the past 4 years. All right, you guys, I'll be back with another episode next week. Bye. Thank you for listening to the podcast this week, friend. I appreciate you being here. And hey, if you enjoyed this episode, I want to tell you about something. I would encourage you to check out my website template shop. Over on ElizabethMcCravey.com, you'll find Showit website templates, and they are easy to use, strategically designed, and created to help you book more clients and customers. Maybe your current website is really boring. I don't know, maybe it is, and maybe you don't want to hurt its feelings, but you know it's true. And your website needs to be strategically and intentionally designed in order for it to convert your viewers into raving customers. And that's what these website templates do on MShop. These are pre-made website templates built for the Showit platform where you can plug and play your content into the template with ease and then get started with a website that is made to actually make you money. Isn't that what we all want, right? So go shop the templates at ElizabethMcCravey.com/shop. That link is also in the show notes. And don't forget that you can actually subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening so that you never miss an episode. And I would so appreciate it if you left a rating and review for the show on Apple Podcasts, or even just share it with a friend. It's a great way to support the show and then give us your feedback. So thanks so much for listening.